What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Barry Season 4 on HBO. Yes, Barry's final season has begun, now airing back to back with the final season of Succession. A great time to be a HBO viewer. And of course, the conclusion and return of Barry is hotly anticipated because Barry is one of the best HBO dramas of recent times, and a big part of that, of course, has just been the really creative flourishing that Bill Hader has done, both as the star, but also creative force behind this series. Now he's actually going to be the sole director of season 4, which is very exciting, continuing to really, flap his wings and just show just how important of a talent he is, making this really engaging comedy drama that is both incredibly funny and also incredibly dark and dramatic at the same time. And season 4 really picks us up right where we left off with this 2 episode premiere here. Barry is in prison. The miraculous season 3 finale. We're just picking right up at the end of that. Uh, Detective Moss's dad and Gene Cousineau framed Barry. They got him. He is in prison now. And I think this is a really good premiere that makes me quite excited for how the series is going to wrap up for a few reasons. I think the plot is really zeroed in nicely through these 2 episodes. I'm really happy we got to see the 2 episodes for the premiere as well because it really, I think, puts you in a good place with all of the core cast here. So Barry, obviously, as our lead here, he's in prison and he's at the same time seeing visions in the prison yard. He is uh kind of openly expressing his feelings perhaps for the first time, which is a bit of growth for him as a character. But he's seeing visions of his past and flashing back to meeting Fuchs as a child and kind of continuing what we saw in season 3, where the show is almost getting more of metaphysical in a sense. Of course, remember the scene with Barry on the beach in season 3 was huge, right? Barry seemingly is without like purpose and doesn't seem to have a whole lot of agency at the beginning of this show, kind of lost and defeated, right? Which of course makes sense. Meanwhile, Fuchs starts out agreeing to be an informant with for the FBI and talk to Barry to expose more of the past crimes and try and get himself a deal. Fuchs later flips and decides he doesn't want to do that. He wants to connect with Barry, which then leaves Barry's decision to actually talk to the FBI instead as like a huge turning point. And I thought this was a really effective moment to put Fuchs and Barry against each other once again for this seemingly final showdown in our final season, and also really smartly brings NoHo Hank and Cristobal brings NoHo Hank's story back into focus, right? I was really curious how NoHo Hank would stay on the show. Obviously, the Anthony Carrigan performance as Hank is awesome. He's probably the best comedic force on the show. But, it would have felt a bit contrived, I think, to keep Hank on the show unless it was done really well after everything that Hank went through throughout season 3. But by having Hank and Cristobal together and safe after everything that happened, deciding to kind of unite the Chechens and the Bolivians, kind of unite their business interests and try and get going again, get themselves reestablished. And I thought all that stuff was pretty funny too, as they're trying to make their pitches to their 2 factions. But having Hank feel betrayed by learning that Barry is talking to the FBI when Fuchs calls him, and then Hank deciding he needs to not break out Barry and use him on their side, they have to kill Barry instead. Really awesome way to bring Hank back into that plot and put him at odds with Barry, just like Fuchs is at odds with Barry. I really like that decision. Really happy about that. Meanwhile, Sally goes back home, leaves LA. We saw her getting on the plane at the end of season 3, meets her parents. She's not getting what she wants from her parents, and ends up going back to LA and realizing that her career is completely finished because not only is she the C word girl after the viral video of her yelling at her Darcy Corton, her assistant in season 3. Not only is she completely toxic on that viral video, but now she is also connected to a notorious serial killer in Barry Bergman, someone she used to date. So Sally's life is really spiraling, and you see her talk to Barry at the prison on the phone, and you can tell that Sally, from the way she was moving at home with her parents, understanding her personal situation, Sally's incredibly broken. I'm not really sure what the arc is going to be for Sally, because she's definitely a person who has made a lot of mistakes during her narrative arcs here. But you'd have to imagine the show's going to set her up for some kind of redemption in some way. I'm not sure. How connected will that be to the rest of the plot? Obviously Sally did kill someone, basically protecting Barry in season 3. Of course, that was like a bad guy, so I'm not really sure if there's any like real connection to like the criminal element anymore for Sally. I'm quite curious how they kind of keep her connected to everyone else for just being a separate plot. We'll see. Then Jean, of course, talks to Detective Moss's dad. Was it Jim Moss? I forgot his name. I love Mr. Moss as well. Amazing presence, some of the best humor too. He's awesome. Just the stern presence he has. But we have Moss and Jean deciding they're not going to talk to the press. Moss doesn't want his daughter's story and tragic end to be exploited for entertainment, which of course is a completely reasonable thing to think. But Jean, despite what he says to Detective Moss, Jean's a narcissist, right? We've known this now for 3 seasons and running. Gene can't help himself. He has to talk to Vanity Fair. And when he has this put on this whole elaborate stage show to talk to the reporter, I'm sure he's not going to come out looking good once that story gets out there. But Gene, he revels in the fame, the light fame he's got as the one who took down Barry, right? So surely we haven't heard the last from the Gene Barry conflict. But yeah, overall, like I'm actually feeling really good about where all our core characters are and how they're connected to each other through 2 episodes. And I think you just think back to season 3, the big swings that were taken on the show with the beach scene, as well as the incredible motorcycle chase set piece. Like we don't really know what to expect anymore, except that it's going to be done at a really high level and executed on incredibly well. The camera work that Hader is now really solely responsible for is just incredibly impressive. You have these really finely drawn characters across the ensemble, and the show has progressively gotten darker and darker. You think about where the show has come from. It's really left behind the satirization of Hollywood and like LA culture and stuff like that season 1 was. And season 1 was like perfect note the entire time. We never would have thought the show would blossom into what it's become, but now it's such a richer, more emotionally layered series, and really unlike anything else we get right now. So cannot wait to watch the end of Barry season 4. Just thinking back, not only is it going to be airing with the final season of Succession at the same time, but Ted Lasso season 3, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel season 5. That's 4 shows ending their final seasons at the same time. All those premieres are going to air in like a 5-day span at the end of May. Pretty exciting if you happen to watch all those shows. But let me know how you're feeling about Barry. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.